Hello everyone, my name is KirbyG with KirbyG's Points and Miles. Just wanted to show a little bit about how my experiences within the credit card game allowed me to travel to Europe, specifically Italy and Greece last November, for very low out-of-pocket costs. So I made a quick little presentation kind of detailing all of my costs, what point currencies I used, how I accumulated them, and I was able to turn that into a great vacation. All right, now that I got the presentation up and going, just a little bit about myself. So my name, like I said, I'm Kirby Gibson. I'm a 26-year-old, originally from the Midwest. I'd say my income is upper middle class. I did recently just move to California, so maybe that salary isn't as great for California, but compared to the average American, that's what I'd say my salary is, just for comparison purposes. I was in a post-grad rotational program that I recently just graduated from. So after graduating grad school, I moved every 6 months for 2 years. So I actually started off in Irvine, California, moved to Fort Worth, Texas, and then Cleveland, Ohio, and then finally Akron, Ohio. And then I just recently accepted a position to go full-time back in Irvine. So travel's really built into my job. Now that the program is over, my work travel will go down a little bit, but I'm sure things will come up. I'd also say I have very low spend. Now that I moved to California, that's probably a little bit different. My rent has definitely gone up, so I could, get some spend there. But overall, I'd say it has been hard for me to accumulate points. Kind of, my overall travel goals, I would also say that I really have this great number in mind. I want to spend a night in 7 continents, 100 countries, and 50 states. I have a lot of states knocked down. I have about 7 countries knocked down, and about 3 continents. So I got a lot of work to do over the next couple years. Specifically, I'd love to hit these by the time I'm 40. And then just for comparison's sake, the previous big trips I've taken involve France, Hawaii, and New Zealand. France, I was in high school, so I did pay for that myself, but no credit card points were available to me then. Hawaii was my graduation present for graduating grad school. That was a large event my mom really wanted to put on. She had been saving up money from donating plasma to BioLife for about 8 years and cashed that all out and was able to give us a great vacation. And then New Zealand was kind of that first opportunity, a little peek into credit card points, as I was given $1,000 by Delta to get off a flight. Really wanted to maximize that benefit. And then at the time I was living in California, so having a direct flight from LAX to Auckland on Delta was a brand new route for them, and so it just made sense to take a trip then. And when I got back, I was like, how can I do this more? And that's really when I found the credit card community. So some goals for this specific trip. I really wanted to use Delta miles, as that was the only airline currency I had at the time. I flew Delta for work a lot, and so it started to accumulate those. And since I was flying Delta so much for work, this also led to me getting the Delta Gold card at the time. I then upgraded that to the Platinum card, and that's what I had for this trip at the time. And then I recently actually upgraded that to the Delta Reserve, all on some type of upgrade offer from Amex. The other main card that I used for this trip was the Capital One Venture card. At the time, it had a 75K mile plus a $250 statement credit welcome offer, and so I wanted to use that $250 statement credit to go towards all the hotels. I also wanted to make this trip last 10 days around there, and my friend that I convinced to go with me also wanted around a 9 to 11 day trip. Also wanted to use the least amount of cash as possible, but still have a good time. So specifically with the flights, I used 62,000 Delta Sky miles in a multi-city flight from Cleveland to JFK to Rome, with the return leg from Athens to JFK to Cleveland. So for this specific redemption, the multi-city was the way to go over one way. I know when redeeming for those more aspirational trips in first or business class, you always book those one way. But with the Delta Sky miles that I had, as that was the only currency I really had at the time, multi-city was much cheaper than doing a round trip from Cleveland to Rome, Rome to Cleveland, and then if we wanted to go to a different country, having to get back to Rome, that just didn't make sense. The multi-city price options were very competitive, which is something that I was very surprised by. And as I said, this was the first sniffing of credit card points that I ever used. This goal was to do this in main cabin. So unfortunately, this was not my first business class flight yet, but that'll be coming in the future. Overall, I got a 1.3 cent per point value, which I think is, it's okay. It's nothing special, but the amount of miles that I used for all of these flights, I think is actually kind of a good return on investment. So, I didn't have to reposition to JFK at all. Everything was booked all in one go. So if you say 31,000 miles each way, I'll take that. I also got upgraded from main cabin to Comfort Plus the whole way home. On the flight from Athens to JFK was not full, and so I got a nice upgrade to Comfort Plus, and then on the way home as well. So, that won't happen to everyone, but with my Delta Silver Medallion status, I've gotten very good luck flying in and out of Cleveland and getting some good upgrades, even first class a couple of times. Also, the dates I selected were the cheapest, but not the best in per point value. There were other days, like give or take a few days on either side, where my cent per point value was better, but it was more Delta Sky Miles. So since that I do value Sky Miles as a currency, it actually made sense to take a lower cent per point and use less Sky Miles, which is something that not everyone always takes into account. And then unfortunately on my flight from Athens to JFK, the Wi-Fi didn't work. I didn't have to pay for it. So they ended up refunding me 3 times because I complained. So they gave everyone 7,500 Sky Miles. They refunded me the actual purchase. Before they did that, I had called Delta and they did a manual refund. So something that wasn't too great at the time. I guess I can't complain too much. Then just to get myself out of the way here a little bit, I also looked at comparable flights to what I did now, and a round of that those are all $1,200 plus flights. Again, that's maybe due to Jubilee for the time I looked at this. Try to compare it to November. This isn't the best time to search for flights in November, so take that with a grain of salt. Then also we spent $115 on an ETA Airways flight from Florence to Athens, just to reposition ourselves. Again, just normal economy, nothing special, but it got the job done. All right, so for hotels, we spent 2 nights in Rome. I got $184 of my Capital One credit applied to that, so we only had to pay the taxes that you have to pay when you get there. Also was able to cover 2 nights in Rome, was able to cover most of those costs with the Capital One credit. And then for the final 6 nights, 2 nights in Florence and 4 nights in Athens, we ended up just paying those in cash. They were fairly cheap hotels. I did cash out some cash back, which I'll talk to in a little bit, which basically covered those nights. Not directly, though. For excursions, obviously we wanted to hit the main targets, so like the Colosseum, the Parthenon, Vatican City, the Acropolis, all that awesome stuff. And what we did to get the best bang for our buck on that was using Get Your Guide through the Capital One shopping portal. So at the time, they were offering 13% cash back. I do believe they've kind of reworked that, and now you just get extra miles. But at the time, it was a 13% discount on all of that. So it was an absolute nightmare to get that cash back from Capital One. It probably took about 3 months to get one of the largest purchase we made to get that cash back. But at the end of the day, 13% plus the 2% from the venture card, getting the 15% return on investment for those purchases really did help out a lot. Then we also used everyone's favorite guide, Rick Steves' free museum guides were an absolute godsend. Saved us so much money on paying for tours. It's a very nice soothing voice. Pop in some earphones, download the app, and took us through many of the more lesser known museums that we didn't necessarily want to pay a guide for. So how did we get around? We did a lot of walking. We did almost a marathon a day, almost on average. I actually ended up losing 18 pounds while I was in Europe, and that was definitely not because of my eating. I ate so much food in Europe, and I still lost weight just from all the walking that we did. To get from each city, so we started off in Rome, went to Naples, then to Florence. We took buses and trains. Some advice my old roommate from college had gotten was that you should just buy the bus or train tickets day of. The price doesn't really change that much. I actually found out that that was a complete lie and no longer true, as if we had bought in those tickets, weeks or months in advance, they probably would have been about half as much as we ended up paying. And they were not very great. They weren't great trains. A lot of the nicer ones had sold out. We had told ourselves that we would kind of take, maybe not like a first class train ticket, but take some of the nicer trains to each city, which those ended up being sold out. We did take a couple of taxi drivers. They were absolutely insane, reminded me of my time in New York City. Guess there are bad drivers in every country. And then also, but we did bus around in Rome, and unfortunately we did get ticketed. We got on a bus, validated our ticket, realized we were going the wrong direction, and then ended up getting off that bus, but getting on the same bus going the opposite direction. The police came in, scanned our tickets, said we were not on the right bus, and gave us a nice €80 fine, which did not feel good, and that led us to never taking the bus again, and we walked everywhere. Some other credit card notes that I wanted to mention is that I did cash out about $225 from my US Bank Cash Plus that I had for years. It's actually my first ever credit card that I got when I turned 18. So I directly deposited that into my bank account after the trip was taken, which roughly equated to about my half of the hotels. I also hit the sub on my Venture card before I left for the trip. It was something I thought I would kind of use the trip to finish, but because of some other expenses that had come up, I hit the sub way before I thought I would, and I wish I would have opened up another credit card right before I got on the trip, so all of that Europe spent could have gone on something else. But at the time, the Venture card was still giving lounge access, which was something it did until the end of 2024. We each got 2 lounge visits, which we were able to use at the Plaza Premium Lounge in Rome, which had some amazing breakfast. Definitely wish we could have been able to hit the lounge one more time, but unfortunately we weren't able to do that when we landed in Rome, only when we were leaving. It was very small, but did have some amazing food. And the Delta Platinum card was used to pay for the taxes on my flight. So how do we split the cost with the 2 of us going on this trip? So like I said, he's a former roommate from college, not my player 2, wasn't something where we just had, one person pays for everything and when figure out at the end. We actually detailed every single purchase made and then split the cost 50-50. He felt like I was spending too much money, he would buy the next thing, so on and so forth. It worked, but I would definitely say the juice was not really worth the squeeze, as they say. And what about the hotel credit? Should I have made him pay for half of the hotel in Rome and Naples? At the time I didn't. I just paid for it and said those hotels are good. Some people might say I only got $125 worth of the credit. I say if I was going to go, doesn't matter anyway. I would have done this trip by myself if he hadn't joined me. Who knows? Who cares? I don't. And I would just kind of end here with some lessons learned that I took on this trip. I would say cent per point is important, but right now the total amount of points spent is more important to me. What I mean by that is that I do not really consider cent per point at all. I will always take the lesser point option. Now, when I'm want to fly business class, and I have the points, I'll just do it. Won't think about that cent per point. When I am thinking at domestic economy flights, which is what I do most of the time domestically, maybe some Comfort Plus sprung in there depending on how I'm feeling, always just take the least amount of points. Because points are so valuable to me, I really want to squeeze them as far as I can. Also, be more lax regarding splitting cost. Like I said, it doesn't matter. If someone spent a little bit more money, I don't really care. Also, travel tips from 5+ years ago, they're not reliable. If you're going to France and your friend went to France 5 years ago and they gave you tips, probably not great information. Try to find someone who went in the last year to give you better information. And also that balance of taking the trip you want to take versus taking the trip your points say you can take for free. I always think of Uncle Luke's kind of philosophy on this is that there's a long list of places I want to go. If the points point me to something on my list, even if it's not at the top of my list, I'm going to go. And so when I am thinking about my next trip, I'm just going to say, what points do I have? Where do they transfer? What are the best redemptions now that my home international airport will be LAX? LAX flies everywhere. where can I go? And that's what I'll do. Then overall, I would say, we spent, we got there November, flew out November 9th, flew back November 20th, 10 days for everything. I'd say my total cash cost was less than $1,000. Fortunately, I don't have those strict numbers. I wasn't thinking about that at the time. But for me personally, being able to say I spent 10 days in Europe, got to see every single museum, archaeological site, Colosseum. I got to see it all, and I spent less than $1,000. Absolute win. I also got paid during that trip, so my bank account never really went down. So from where it was before the trip, when I left, it was higher after I paid all my credit card bills. So I always just want to recommend people saying, at the end of the day, take the trip. Credit cards have really allowed me to take trips I never thought I would have taken. So thinking about this for a future video, but I do not want to be someone whose plans never leave the group chat. And so that's definitely allowed me to bully my friends more into taking trips on me, getting myself deeper and deeper into the credit card game, acquiring more points, and finally redeeming them for amazing trips. So to everyone, just want to thank you for watching this video and just seeing a little bit how I used my miles and my situation to get me an amazing vacation.